Congressman Jones has been a friend of ours for a long time, a friend of the family, and one of my dad's best friends, and I think one of the saner voices in Washington. I think he's been a great independent voice, and we're excited that he's, I hope, going to continue to be your congressman. I think there's a big difference between Republicans and Democrats, and right now the agenda we get out of Washington is Harry Reid's agenda, and that is if there's a bill to lower taxes, it will never see the light of day. If there's a bill to lessen regulation, it will never see the light of day. If there was a bill or a constitutional amendment to balance the budget, it'll never see the light of day. So I think Thom Tillis would be for all of those things. I think Thom Tillis is for letting you choose your doctor. I mean, I think it's night and day difference. I think the biggest limitation on voting in our country, the biggest legal impediment to voting, is people who have a previous conviction. And I've been someone who's saying that people should get a second chance, that young people who make a mistake with drugs, who serve their time, who commit a nonviolent felony, should get their right to vote back. So I spent a lot of time talking about restoration of voting rights, and that I'm for more people voting, not less. I want people to know that I want a Republican Party that welcomes new people to the party, African Americans, Hispanics, you name it. I want new people in the party, and I want them to know that my policy, at least, is more people voting, not less.
I want to read just one slight sentence from the presidential oath. And will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. Mr. Bush did not keep his word when he swore to the American people. Mr. Obama has not kept his word when he swore to the American people. But the man I'm going to introduce now, if given that chance, will keep his word to the American people. And that is the senator from Kentucky, Rand Paul. Let's give him a warm welcome. Your government's open, okay? The bad news is your government's open, okay? Your government's open in borrowing $1 million a minute. So in the next 13 hours of my speech, we're going to borrow. No, wait, can you imagine? In the next 20 minutes, we'll borrow $20 million. I mean, it's completely crazy what's going on with this. So we had this big battle about a year ago. You remember when the government shut down? Well, sort of. But the president was afraid you might not notice. Why? Because 2/3 of your government's on autopilot. 2/3 of your government is Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. It never closes down. It is immortal. It is in perpetuity and not paid for. But 2/3 of your government never shut down. So really, we were talking about 1/3 of your government. And why were we even talking about that? Because Congress doesn't do their job. There's 12 appropriation bills. Historically, we'd pass them one at a time, and once they were passed, that part of the government was open. We don't pass any appropriation bills anymore. At the very end of the year, as the deadline looms, we look like a bunch of chickens running around with our heads cut off, and we say, we've got to pass it or the government shuts down. It's 2,000 pages. Nobody reads it. Nobody can physically read it. We often get it at 8 in the morning, we pass it by noon. And then it's hurry up, get the House, do it. They need to go, pass it over to the Senate. Nobody reads it. And then to make matters worse, the last time when we kept government open about 2 weeks ago, they stuck a little more in the spending bill. We didn't have a debate over going to war. We just stuck it in. I told them, inconvenient time to talk about it. Well, war's never convenient, but you ought to debate about it. We shouldn't willy-nilly send our young men, our honorable and courageous young men and women, without having a debate over war. And it's really a crime that we didn't. But we did learn some things. And Congressman Jones will confirm this. During the shutdown, they sent us a request. They said, list your essential and your unessential employees. And I'm like, wow, we're going to learn a lesson here. We're going to try to figure out what part of government we absolutely have to have and what we don't. And so we got this, and I thought it was interesting. I get to fill out a list for my employees. And I said, well, let's find out what the IRS's list looks like. So I asked my staff, they called up the IRS, 90% unessential. I said, we're going to learn something here. There's a real lesson we're going to learn about government. 90% of the IRS is unessential. I said, call the EPA. So they called the EPA, 95% unessential. And I thought, we're on to something here. We're going to discover that most of government is unessential. And I was so naive, because the more I dug into this, I discovered something. Guess what? If you're unessential, you don't have to come to work, but you do get paid. So I had this debate with the president. I sent him a letter and I said, why don't we cut some spending? He says, well, we really couldn't. Where would we cut? We've cut to the bone. Where would we cut spending? So I gave him a list of a few things. I said, well, why don't we just not rehire anybody when they retire? You save $6 trillion a year by not rehiring people. If you simply freeze federal spending, no cuts, just freeze it, the budget bounces within 10 years. If you were to cut 1 penny out of every dollar, the budget actually bounces within 5 years. People say, how could we do that? Has anybody here ever had to deal with 1% less in income? People do it all the time. Government does the opposite. When you suffer, they say government should spend more. Well, maybe we should balance our budget to cause less suffering. Maybe we'd have more jobs. I think when we proclaim our message, like a man coming over the hill singing, when we proclaim our message with a passion of Patrick Henry, I think when we proclaim our message with such optimism and enthusiasm and warmth for growing the economy and for getting a job for everyone, then I think we'll be the dominant party again. Thank you very much.